Hey everybody, it's Scott from Extreme Performance Training Systems here, and in today's video I want to look at the deadlift. Now, a lot of you have a basic barbell set and even a squat rack or power rack for your at-home fitness training, and that's awesome. But if you were to ask me, the key component of any home gym would obviously be your barbell and weights. So even with just a basic Olympic weight set, you can really do a lot as far as getting a lot of mileage out of your home-based training program. For instance, if you just had a bar, plates, and then maybe a matted area in your basement or your garage where you could work, you could deadlift, you could do Romanian deadlifts or stiff-legged deadlifts, you could do clean and presses, you could do bent over rows, you could do barbell curls, you could do tricep extensions, you could do floor presses. I mean, there's a whole variety of exercises that you could do just around the barbell and weights alone. But the deadlift, in my opinion, is probably the best builder of strength, and it's one of the easiest movements to do if you pay attention to a couple key points, which I want to go over today. Now, the deadlift has kind of gotten a little bit of flack in the online, the YouTube community and stuff because of some comments that a popular strongman had made on a recent podcast where he felt it was an unnecessary movement for athletes to perform because it's not safe for the back and things like that. But I'd have to disagree. I think the deadlift is one of the best exercises that you could do when you're talking about building strength for the back, albeit if you do it properly, follow correct technique, and you're smart about your loading. Now, trying to pull 1 rep maxes on a daily basis where your form's breaking down, that's going to increase the chance of injury. But if you're smart with the loading that you select and you pay attention to some of these key points that we're going to go over as far as technique, this is a very safe exercise and one of the most efficient and effective ways to build up strength, not only in the lower back, but the glutes, the hamstring, the upper back, the torso. It builds grip strength and forearm strength. I mean, really the only muscles that are kind of left untouched with the deadlift would be your upper body pushing muscles like your chest, your shoulders, and your triceps. But the deadlift, being a full body strength exercise, is going to work virtually every muscle in your body. And a lot of people talk, I know I've even talked about the squats being one of the most important exercises, the cornerstone of any good training program. Well, the deadlift is right up there. And kind of in my opinion, I may be a little bit partial, a little bit biased to the deadlift, but I think it is one of the best exercises that you do in your training program. So there's just a couple things about the deadlift. Now, there are a few different stances that you can use when you're doing the deadlift. Primarily, people are going to use either the conventional stance or the sumo stance. But even within those stances, there's a lot of room for you to adjust, maybe bringing your feet in a little bit closer, bring your feet out a little bit wider. Just based on your body leverages, your individual constitution, you have to work with your body, your physical makeup, so that you're choosing the correct stance and the correct setup. And the way to do that is to make sure that you can adhere to the key points that the body's supposed to be in regard to position at the setup. Now, whether you're using a sumo stance or conventional stance, and we'll look at both of them in the video, but regardless of which one you're using, you want to make sure that the shins remain perpendicular to the ground. So regardless of the stance, you don't want your knees going forward and your shin angle going forward. You want your shins to be posted perpendicular, vertical to the ground, so that the bar comes right up the shins. If your knees are forward and your shins are at forward shin angle, you're gonna have to pull the bar around your knees, and it's not gonna be the best line of pull. You know, they say the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Well, we want to apply that here with the deadlift. We want that bar moving in a straight line. So when you set up, I'm gonna start out with the conventional stance. Now, conventional stance is generally regarded as about a stance that's hip width. Some people will go a little bit wider, some people will go a little bit closer with their feet turned out, but in all the conventional stance deadlifts, the hands are gripping the bar outside the legs. Now, the sumo stance, you're going to take a little bit wider stance, and you're going to grab the bar with the hands between the legs, with the arms between the legs. And again, even with the sumo stance, I see people who use a narrower stance. We almost call this a frog stance or a semi-sumo, but they still are grabbing the bar between the legs. And then the more kind of traditional sumo stances where people go a little bit wider to reduce the distance that they have to pull the bar. Now, before we actually get into the deadlift technique, depending on what stance you use, if I've noticed that in the people that I've worked with, people with stronger backs tend to gravitate more toward the conventional stance. People with stronger hips and legs tend to gravitate more toward the sumo. Again, you're going to have to experiment and find out what stance works best for you and your individual body constitution, but it's not a bad idea to learn both and then to implement both in your training. All right, so we're going to take a look at the conventional stance first. I'm going to start out with my feet about hip width apart, shoulder width apart, And again, you can move those feet a little bit closer with your toes pointed out. That's a popular stance people like to use. Or you can go with your feet a little closer to shoulder width. But regardless, you're going to be grabbing the bar outside the legs. Now, the key point here is to make sure that the shins are very close to the bar, if not right up on the bar. Now, bigger lifters, people who are a little bit thicker, are going to have to set up a little bit further away from the bar. People who are a little bit narrower can get a little closer to the bar, but you want to be able to, when you approach the bar, keep your shins vertical so that the knees aren't drifted forward out over the bar, all right? So when we set up for the deadlift, whether it's conventional or sumo stance, we get those shins close to the bar. Now the sumo, the shins are going to be right on the bar, okay, regardless of body structure. But for the conventional stance, once you figure out how close you want to be to the bar, you're going to start by sitting back and breaking at the hips. You're going to start by hinging at the hips and then letting the knees unlock. And you're going to continue this sitting back and letting the knees unlock until you're able to grab the bar. Now, this is where it changes for some people. Some people like to continue to drop the hips lower so that the torso is vertical and use a lot of leg drive. Some people like to pull with that high hip position where the knees are just partially bent and they're relying mostly on hip extension with the glutes and the hamstrings to lock the bar out. Either way, this movement is a hip extension. One variation where you're dropping your hips lower is going to allow you to use more leg drive. The other, with the hips set a little bit higher, is going to rely a little bit more on your back and your glutes and the hip extension to drive the movement. All right. So set up by stepping close to the bar. Once you get your optimal stance, you're going to sit back and unlock the knees until you're able to grab the bar. Now, if you're going to pull with a high hip position, you're going to sit back and you're going to load through the back of the heels like you're taking the slack out of the bar, sitting back and trying to wedge yourself beneath or between the bar and the ground. All right, so that's going to be the setup. So again, sit back and down, grab the bar, lock that grip in, lock the elbows tight, drop the hips back, pull up on the chest, and then drive your feet into the ground, driving your hips forward into the bar to lock out the weight. To reverse the movement, all you're going to do is stick the hips back and let the bar travel straight back down to the platform. All right, so that is an example of a higher hip conventional stance deadlift. Now you notice I said in regards to taking the slack out of the bar, once you grab that bar and get it really tight, you're gonna lock those elbows and you're gonna push your hips down and compress your legs like you're tensing up springs. And that's gonna almost lift the bar at the start of the movement. And you're doing that by almost wedging your body between the bar and the ground. So you're really sitting back to the heels where you're using your body as a leverage against the weight, and that's going to assist with the pull. Now, an example of a little bit lower hip position for the conventional stance deadlift, instead of starting with that high hip position, I'm going to continue driving my hips down and get that chest up as high as possible so my torso is upright when I go to do the deadlift. So with this type of deadlift, I'm going to grab the bar, I'm going to lock the elbows and get tight. Now I'm going to lower the hips down, get that chest nice and high, and then from here, I'm just going to drive more with the legs, pulling the bar straight up. And then, again, reversing the movement to set the bar down on the platform. So those are two examples of the conventional stance deadlift. One is a higher hip position, one is a lower hip position. The key for both, though, is to maintain a neutral spine with an arch in the lower back. We don't want the spine to round through the lower back. Now, at heavier weights, we often see examples of deadlifts where the shoulders tend to round forward or the thoracic spine tends to round forward in our heavy weights. That's fine. What we want to avoid is that lower back from rounding under load. So we want to keep that lower back arch, our spine in a neutral position with that chest up when we pull, regardless if it's the high or the low hip position. Now with the sumo stance deadlift, like I said, regardless of your body size, you're going to start out with the shins right on the bar. Now whether you're using a little bit closer, more of that kind of semi-sumo or frog stance deadlift, or if you're going really wide with your feet out closer to the plates, it doesn't matter. The shins are always right on the bar. Now as far as the setup, the same rules apply. We want to break the hips back and we want to push out on the knees now instead of just bending over to grab the bar. With the sumo, we're trying to keep the hips as close to the bar as possible throughout the entire range of motion. So I'm going to try to squat down to the bar while pushing the hips back as opposed to bending to the bar to pushing the hips back. So here, once I grab that bar, I'm going to lock my grip on tight, and then I'm going to pull the slack out of the bar again by dropping those hips down, pulling that chest up. Now the sumo, I'm gonna push out on my feet as I pull back on the bar, driving my hips into the bar. Unlike the conventional stance where I'm driving my feet into the ground as I drive my hips into the bar. So that's the big difference. Is the sumo, we're gonna focus on pushing out on the sides of the feet like we're trying to spread the ground while we slam the hips into the bar as we pull the weight up. With the conventional stance deadlift, it's almost like we're doing a leg press by pushing the feet straight into the ground to drive the weight up, all right? So again, with the sumo, I'm gonna get my stance, pushing out on the feet. I'm gonna sit my hips back as I squat down to the bar, keeping those shins perpendicular to the ground, get my grips nice and tight, lock the elbows, and then I'm gonna get tense by dropping my hips and pulling my chest up. Then I'm gonna drive out on the feet, drive the hips into the bar while I pull back on the bar to leverage the weight up. And just like the conventional stance deadlift, I simply reverse the movement to lower the weight down. So the key points with the deadlift, whether you're using the sumo stance or the conventional stance, is that taking the slack out of the bar. Again, the easiest way to do that is once you have the bar loaded and you can get down and get your grips on the bar, lock those elbows, and then use the weight to kind of leverage your body against, and you're trying to sink the hips back and down, almost like you're trying to create a bend in the bar before you go ahead and lift it. You often see if you've actually got a deadlift bar and you're using a decent amount of weight on the bar, that bar is going to actually bend a little bit before the plates break the ground. And that's how you know if you're taking the slack out properly. But you should, when you do it, you almost hear the collars kind of tighten up inside the plates. So when you're grabbing that bar and you're wedging yourself down to set up for the pull, you'll hear the things kind of get tight. See that? So I don't know if that came through on the video, but as I'm pulling myself down and kind of compressing the springs in my legs to create a lot of tension before the lift, you almost feel the bar tighten up against the plates, all right? So the collars, you might even hear them cling inside the holes of the plates. So again, whether it's a sumo or conventional stance, pull the slack out of the bar, create a lot of tension before you lift. Now in regards to breathing, at the start of the lift, right before you pull, as you're creating that tension and you're pulling the slack out of the bar, take a big breath down into the abdomen and brace the abs as tight as you can. You don't want to suck your belly button in. You don't want to totally blow your stomach out. What you want to do is draw a big breath of air in and then squeeze the glutes, brace the abs, and compress everything into the torso. Almost like somebody was going to hit you in the stomach, how you would kind of brace your abs for that sort of impact. That's what you're trying to do with the deadlift. Take a big breath of air, hold it, squeeze the glutes, brace the abs tight. Don't suck the belly button in. Don't push it out, but squeeze them really, really tight. That will create tension through the entire body as you're taking the slack out of the bar, and you're gonna have a really powerful pull. So again, the deadlift is one of my favorite lifts, whether you're in the gym or training at home. I think everybody should have a barbell set as part of their home gym. So hopefully those of you checking this out do have access to a barbell where you're training at home. If not, and you're looking to add some equipment for your home gym, I'd definitely start with standard 7-foot Olympic barbell and plates. Now, if you want to got some money to spend, some manufacturers out there make some great bars. They even make specialty deadlift bars, which are a little bit thinner. They got a little bit sharper knurling. They're a little bit longer than a standard bar, but any standard 7-foot Olympic bar is a great place to start, especially if you're not a world champion powerlifter, but you're just looking to add a good full body strength movement to your home-based training. Like I said, standard 7-foot Olympic bar, get some plates. Definitely make sure you have a couple sets of 45s. And then as far as the smaller plates, to get all your increments, you need a pair of 25s, a pair of 10s, 2 pairs of 5s, and then a pair of 2.5s. And that will give you all the increments in 5 pounds in between your 45-pound plates. So you get those, then all you gotta do is keep adding 45s as your strength improves with the lift. And whether you're gonna get a power rack set up or a squat rack or a bench or something like that, you're gonna need the barbell and weights anyway. So if you're just starting with one piece, start with the bar, the standard 7-foot Olympic bar, and your plates, and then build your home gym up from there. But like I said, even if you've only got access to a barbell and plates, it's really gonna allow you for a lot of variety in your home strength training program, particularly if your goals are to build strength and build muscle size. Now you can do a lot with just body weight. You can do a lot of good conditioning work with bands. You can do a lot of great stuff with kettlebells and dumbbells. I'm a huge proponent of all those other things. But if your goal is strength and building muscle mass, you're gonna need to lift some heavy weights at some point. So start with that barbell and plates. So hopefully you enjoyed this video and this series that I'm doing from my basement. Again, the official original site of Extreme Performance Training System. This is where I launched my business, right over there in that corner with my first power rack. But again, hopefully you're enjoying these videos and it's bringing some value to your home-based workouts. If you like this video, please share it with somebody who you think might find this information beneficial. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you go to my YouTube page and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button down in the corner of this video if you haven't yet. I appreciate all the support. If you've got any questions or comments, please leave those in the comment section below. If you've got any suggestions on future video topics, if there's an exercise demonstration you'd like to see, if there's a certain training methodology you have a question about, it's just any tips and tricks for whether it's home-based training or gym exercises, whatever, please leave those in the comments section or shoot me an email at scott@eptsgym.com or reach out to me on my social media. I'm active on Facebook. I'm active on Instagram as well and Twitter. So send me those questions, send me those suggestions. I'll be happy to direct future videos toward that particular content. And until next time, stay strong and stay healthy.